At 3 a.m., wake up in the Great Fire of London, the shocking truth about survival. Flames roared like hungry beasts, devouring everything in their path, while the sky turned into a hellish orange. Fear gripped the hearts of thousands as smoke billowed up high, choking the very air Londoners breathed. What scene had unfolded in the dead of night to spark such chaos? People stumbled blindly, their faces ghostly and terrified in the flickering light of destruction. It was 1666, and London was not just burning, it was collapsing into an inferno of despair. As the first cries echoed through the tight, winding streets, a peculiar absence surrounded the fire's dance. The bells of St. Paul's Cathedral, usually loud and proud, were eerily silent. It was almost as if the city itself held its breath, paralyzed by the horror unfolding. Spotting a silhouette in the haze, a woman staggered, clutching her child, their tear-streaked faces illuminated by the terrifying flame. All around, the sounds of crackling wood and the snap of collapsing buildings mingled with the gasps of horrified onlookers who bore witness to the madness, their eyes wide with a blend of shock and disbelief. In the midst of it all, strange legends began swirling. Some whispered of a cursed baker whose negligence ignited this nightmare, others believed it was a witch's revenge. Whatever the truth, it seemed the lines between reality and folklore blurred in the suffocating smoke. Suddenly, a heavy thud rang out, a roof crashed mere feet away from where a man desperately sought refuge. The threat felt ever present, as if the flames themselves had eyes, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to claim another soul. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the flames surged higher, a haunting figure appeared in the distance, a man draped in shadows, his eyes glinting like embers. "Follow me," he shouted, beckoning to the desperate crowd. But who was he? A savior or another trick of the devil lurking among the ashes? People hesitated, uncertainty gripping them tighter than the smoke. What fate awaited those who followed? A surge of dark curiosity raced through them, battling with the instinct to flee. The fire howled behind them, but had they already lost their chance to escape? What lay ahead in the smoke-filled night, weaving through an inferno of secrets and survival? The man's voice resonated through the chaos, powerful yet chilling. His silhouette flickered in and out of the orange glow, creating a disorienting image that clawed at the edges of fear. Those who hesitated found themselves rooted in place, as if the flames were whispering their fate, taunting them to make a choice they were desperately unprepared for. "Please, you must come with me," he shouted again, more urgently now. A few brave souls, driven by desperation, began to move. The woman cradling her child stepped forward, her resolve hardening against the turmoil of fear. Just as she did, the ground trembled slightly beneath her feet, an ominous reminder of the destruction surrounding them. She could feel the warmth of the flames creeping closer, like an unwelcome hand gripping her shoulder, but what lay ahead had its own darkness. Stumbling after the shadowy figure, they followed him into the murky depths of smoke and fire. The crowd shuffled, blindly moving, breathless in their urgency. The ominous figure led them through alleyways that twisted like serpents, shadowed corners that seemed to harbor untold horrors. Who was this man? Would he lead them to safety or into the jaws of doom? As they pressed deeper into the enveloping smoke, the cries of the city faded. The once proud streets of London, echoing with life, transformed into whispers of despair. The air thickened, becoming a wet blanket, dragging them down. Each person felt the weight of despair upon their chest, and the flames roared behind them, a gaping maw hungry for the stragglers. Suddenly, the man stopped. He turned abruptly, fiery eyes piercing through the haze. "This way," he commanded, pointing towards an old wooden door slightly ajar. Hope flickered momentarily as a few rushed towards it. But another boom sounded behind them, shaking the ground, and they hesitated. The instinct to flee battled with the fear of being trapped inside, where darkness held its secrets tight. "Go! Now!" he urged again, an unyielding force behind his words. The remaining group surged forward, driven by the primal urge to escape the wall of flames roaring at their backs. As they pushed through the door, a small burst of light illuminated a narrow staircase spiraling downward into the unknown. They hesitated once more, glancing back at what they were leaving behind. But a blast of heat drove them down, into the hidden recesses below, descending into the abyss. Muffled voices reverberated off the stone walls. It felt like they were entering the very heart of London's underbelly, a place where shadows thrived and the light of day was but a memory. The atmosphere shifted, everything was damp and cold, a stark contrast to the blistering heat above. The man followed closely, his demeanor changing. Sensing their fear, he offered no assurances. Just silence. The uncertainty gnawed at their minds, twisting it into a panic fueled by the fire's relentless gnashing. At the bottom of the staircase, they emerged into a dimly lit cavern. A handful of frightened faces blinked in the gloom, eyes wide and untrusting. "Who are you?" one of them demanded, clutching a tattered cloak tightly to her chest. The question hung in the air, potent and heavy. As the figure opened his mouth to answer, a series of loud crashes echoed from above, followed by a swift rumble that shook the walls around them. The fire was closing in, and there seemed to be no way out. Were they all just rats trapped in a cage that would soon collapse? But amid the encroaching chaos, a glimmer of something caught the man's eye, an old map pinned on the wall, frayed with age. He moved towards it, urgency in his steps. This could be our way out," he said, tracing a path with trembling fingers. What secrets would this map reveal? And if they followed it, would it lead them back into the flames, or perhaps to their salvation? Time was slipping away as they gathered closer, the sounds of disaster echoing above them, and the truth of their survival hung precariously in the balance. The flickering light from a lone candle threw shadows across the damp walls as they craned their necks to examine the ancient map. Each line seemed to breathe with its own pulse, vividly alive with the potential of salvation or doom. The man's finger brushed along a path marked with a shaky ink that had weathered the trials of time. "We need to go here, to the docks," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the sound of their labored breaths. "But that's miles away." A man in the back protested, his brow furrowed, eyes darting to the ceiling as another distant boom reverberated through the cave. "We'll never make it through all that." Quickly, the woman with the child spoke up, resolve building in her voice as she gripped her baby tighter. "We have to try. We can't stay here. We'll die in the darkness before the fire ever reaches us." Murmurs of agreement swept through some of the group, but fear still clung thick in the air like the smoke above. They could feel the pressure mounting, time running like sand slipping through fingers. "What if it's a trap?" another woman asked, her voice shaky as she stepped back toward the walls, desperate to put distance between herself and the man with the map. "How do we know he's not going to lead us straight into the flames?" The man turned, eyes fierce, shimmering like the embers they had fled. "I'm here to help you. We all want to survive." His gaze swept over the terrified faces. "If you stay, you will burn, there's no question. Whether you trust me or not, the flames won't care." They stood there, glancing between each other, weighing their choices like a fragile scale. Seconds ticked by as another tremor rolled through the chamber, causing a shower of dust to fall from the ceiling. Panic engulfed the room. "Are we really going to leave it to chance?" the man shouted. "We can't just sit here and wait for death." With a sharp intake of breath, the woman with the child stepped forward. "I'm with you," she declared, taking the lead. When she glanced back, others began to follow, a fragile thread of solidarity weaving them together. Soon, a handful of determined souls were advancing toward the man, ready to face the unknown. But the man abruptly froze, eyes widening. Wait! We need to hurry. If we linger too long, the entrance will collapse. We can't look back. Their hearts raced in unison as they turned to face the unyielding darkness ahead. The narrow path ahead twisted like a serpent into shadows, but the fire's roar behind them thundered louder, a relentless reminder of their urgency. They had to move. They followed the man through the flickering candlelight, the temperature dropping as they ventured deeper into the tunnel. Around them, echoes of despair bounced, each footfall a reminder that their world was crumbling. As they reached a branching path, a low rumble roared from above, making the ceiling shudder and drip with damp earth. Which way? An out-of-breath woman huffed, desperation evident in her wide eyes. The man stood at the fork, confusion briefly flashing across his features. This map, but he faltered, realizing he couldn't recall which route the scrawled lines indicated. Before anyone could voice their thoughts, a deep crack split the air. The ground shook violently beneath them. Fissures spidered across the cavernous floor. "Run!" he screamed, and they bolted left, driven by instinct. As they dashed forward, the very wall behind them imploded, sending a storm of dust and debris roaring into the air. With each step, they plunged deeper into uncertainty, driven by primal fear. What awaited them in the darkness? Would they find a way out or be swallowed whole by the city's haunted underbelly? And then, as they skidded around a corner, a sliver of light broke through the shadows, illuminating a small exit so faint, it felt like a distant dream. Was this a chance of freedom, or the final step into oblivion? Anxiety gripped them tight as they rushed toward it, not knowing what lay beyond the threshold. In the echoing darkness, the last question lingered in the air: were they chasing hope or venturing toward doom? The blinding light washed over them like an awakening wave, and for a brief moment, they stood frozen at the threshold. Outside the dark confines of the tunnel awaited a world bathed in an unearthly glow. It was both beautiful and terrifying, the air shimmering with the heat of the raging flames that consumed the city above. Beyond safety, they now faced a new reality, one where hope entwined with fear. "Go! We can't hesitate," the man urged, his voice cutting through the silence that had momentarily gripped them. With one desperate push, they surged forward into the light, hearts pounding like drums stuck in a feverish beat. The air outside tasted metallic and acrid, filled with the haunting smell of smoke and ash. They stumbled onto cobblestones smoldering underfoot, visions of fire leaping from building to building, devouring everything in their path. Chaos roiled outside the mouth of the tunnel. Down the street, figures darted through the haze, cries and shouts intermingling with the relentless crackling of the fire. Shadows danced like specters, fleeing or feeding the inferno, blurring the line between friend and foe. "Where do we go?" the woman with the child shouted, panic rising like bile in her throat. She clutched her baby close, as if her warmth could shield him from the hell living all around them. "Look for shelter. Anything," the man commanded, his breath ragged while he scanned the area for any sign of safety. "We need to regroup somewhere secure." A rush of adrenaline fueled their flight. They sprinted past what was once a bakery, its facade now a gaping maw of flame and embers. Behind them, the tunnel had become a tomb, sealing off the old world as they stepped into the chaos of the new. "Over there!" someone yelled, pointing to what appeared to be a narrow alleyway between two buildings. It seemed untouched by the flames, offering a chance, however slim. They bolted for it. As they squeezed into the alley, adrenaline mixed with dread. The walls rose high above them like giants looming in a dark fantasy, offering shelter but also the threat of being trapped. "Is everyone here?" the man panted, counting heads even as he wrestled his own panic. The shadows of their group fell long and wavering, each flicker of light twisting their faces into grotesque expressions of fear. "Wait, where's the old woman?" he suddenly realized, his heart dropping. "She didn't make it out, did she?" "No time for that now," the woman with the child replied, her voice steely despite the trembling in her hands. We need to find a way to escape, see if we can suddenly, a sharp crack echoed from behind them, and their heads whipped around, eyes wide. The buildings trembled, bricks tumbling down like rain around them. Red-hot embers pooled into the alley, trailing smoke and fiery sparks that leapt dangerously close. Move! Get deeper in there! The man shouted, ushering them further away from the entrance, which now resembled a yawning pit of doom. As they scrambled further into the dark, the atmosphere grew thick with soot and despair, each breath felt like inhaling ice shards. What lay ahead? Would help find them, or was it too late? Suddenly, a howl surged through the shadows. Run! Someone screamed, but the sound was spiraling out of control, echoing from everywhere. With every step deeper into the unknown, the weight of uncertainty crashed down, encasing them in a tomb of impending dread. Then, through the darkness, something shifted. Was it their imagination, or was there a chance at survival hiding in the very place they dared not explore? What lurked ahead? Would it lead to salvation or their grave? They pressed on, pushing into the heart of darkness as night swallowed the world whole. They moved deeper into the alleyway, their bodies pressed tightly together as they navigated the uncertain shadows. The air felt thicker, each breath a struggle through the dust and panic that surrounded them. Keep going. We can't stop. The man urged, desperation clawing at his insides. He could feel the trembling of the child against the woman's chest, the soft whimpers echoing like shattered glass in the chaos outside. What awaited them in the depths of the alley? They dared not linger on the thought, but fear lashed at their minds, whispers of doom echoed through the narrow space. Splintered sounds of frantic footsteps, yells, and the crackling fire urged them to run faster. I can't breathe. The woman gasped, clutching her baby tighter, her energy slipping away like wisps of smoke. Just a little further, he reassured her, even as he felt his own resolve waning. We'll find a door or something. We have to. Panic danced on the edges of their thoughts. Every corner turned revealed nothing but darkness and despair. They could hear the roar of the flames growing fiercer, the very ground trembling beneath them as if warning them to turn back. Suddenly, they spotted a flicker of light ahead, a gap between two crumbling walls. It promised refuge, but was it a mirage? The man propelled forward, heart racing as he led them toward the hope that glimmered beyond the dismal gray. As they approached, the light transformed into a door, slightly ajar, its edges charred but seemingly intact. Come on. Get in. He shouted, flinging it open and pulling them through. Inside, they stumbled into a small, cluttered room. The odor of stale air overwhelmed them, mixed with a hint of something metallic. Shadows danced on the walls, and it felt far too quiet, all too familiar after the cacophony of the outside world. Is it safe? The woman whispered, her voice breaking as she pressed her baby closer, seeking to shield them both from whatever ominous presence lurked in the room. Ignoring her doubt, the man strained to listen, his heart hammering. Had the pounding of flames and chaos subsided, or was it lurking just outside? I think it's just us for now. But as they steadied themselves against the cramped space, a new sound emerged. A low, guttural growl emanated from the darkness beyond, each pulse ratcheting up the tension in their chests. What was that? The woman trembled, eyes wide. I don't know, he replied, stomach dropping as icy sweat trickled down his back. Whatever had been ignited by the chaos of the outside world was now encroaching on their fragile sanctuary. The growl grew louder, more insistent, a feral sound that was both hungry and predatory. They exchanged glances filled with terror, a shared acknowledgement that they might have stumbled into a trap far worse than the flames outside. It's coming! He shouted, gripping her arm tightly. We need to find a way out. Now! They searched frantically, eyes darting around the room, desperate to find an escape. The shadows felt alive, curling around the corners as the growling intensified, a haunting reminder that the nightmare was far from over. Before they could formulate a new plan, the door behind them slammed shut with a thunderous bang. Their hearts sank into the pit of their stomachs as the darkness surged forward, swallowing them whole. What lay beyond the shadows? Could they find a path to safety, or had they sealed their fate? The truth neared, and they were left with one haunting question. Would they manage to turn back the tides of despair, or would the darkness consume them forever? The darkness thickened around them, a tangible force pressing in, as the man's heart raced louder than the growl. Each second felt stretched, time slipping through their fingers like sand. They could hear the desperate thump of his heartbeat in his ears, drowning out the chaos behind them. "Help!" the woman cried, her voice trembling in the silence that followed the door's slamming. It felt like the room itself was holding its breath, waiting. "Shoo!" he hissed, feeling the weight of the moment suffocating him. The growl morphed into a series of snorts, then a low snicker filled with menace. It echoed off the cracked walls, wrapping around them like a noose. "Do you see anything?" she whispered, eyes wild. He strained to peer through the veil of shadows, but the deeper they ventured into the small room, the more disorientation took hold. A flicker of light danced from a cracked window, illuminating bits of debris scattered on the ground, broken glass, torn fabric, and a child's toy, an incongruous remnant of innocence in this hellhole. "Nothing yet," he breathed. "We have to find a way out." As if mocking their plight, the growl rose again, closer now, a monstrous confirmation they weren't alone. Panic clutched at his throat. He stumbled backward, away from the sound that seemed to crawl over his skin. "Maybe there's another door," he stumbled over his words, searching the walls frantically. The fabric of the room felt alive with their fear, a cocoon of dread enveloping them. The growling morphed into faint scratching, clawing against the wood, a predator stalking its prey. "I can't stay here," the woman yelled, the terror breaking through her carefully woven facade. She started to push against the door they'd entered, only to find it held fast, an iron grip holding them captive. "It's locked!" he shouted, panic morphing into desperation. She could see it in his eyes, the fear that their sanctuary was nothing but a prison, and that freedom was growing more impossible with each breath. "We need to." Before she finished, the wall beside them tremored, splintering beneath a force unseen. The growl escalated, turning into a series of inhuman roars that reverberated through the air. The man grabbed the woman's arm, his grip like iron, as he pulled her farther from the noise. "Just keep moving," he urged, fighting the urge to freeze. They stepped further into the room, hearts racing in sync, pushing against the suffocating walls that threatened to trap them forever. "Look!" she gasped, pointing to a narrow opening at the far side of the room, concealed by shadows and forgotten debris. "Can we fit through there?" Maybe. He hurried toward it, breath hitching as the growling exploded into an unearthly shriek that reminded them they were losing precious seconds. "Come on!" the man shouted, shoving aside the rusted remains of a metal rack. It collapsed with a terrible clatter that screamed through the silence. Then, all at once, the air shifted. A wave of rancid heat billowed into the room as if the fire outside had found its way in. The deep rumble of flames crept forward like a sentient being. "Move!" He planted himself at the opening, desperately trying to widen the narrow passage. As the warmth touched his skin, fear ignited within him, fear of a fate they could never accept. The woman crouched low, clutching the baby against her, moving like the wind as she squeezed through. The man followed, too aware that every moment brought the chance of being consumed by fire or something far worse. Just as he made it through, the growl turned into a roar. "What is that?" she gasped as they stumbled into a cramped space on the other side, hearts pounding. "I don't know." He spun around to face the growing shadows behind them, the sound swelling to an all-consuming crescendo. In that moment, the truth struck him like a bolt from the blue. They weren't just running from the fire. Something more sinister had been chasing them all along. Now, on the brink of a choice that could seal their fate forever, what awaited them in this new darkness? Was the real danger even deeper than the flames? As the shadows lunged forward, they had only moments to grasp the shocking reality they were facing. In the suffocating dark, they pressed against the cold wall. Breathing heavy, the man strained to listen. The roar behind them faded, but the palpable sense of something lurking refused to dissipate. "What do we do now?" the woman whispered, clutching her baby tighter as if the infant's smallness could shield her from the chaos. Panic was clawing at her throat. Just hold on," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. The shadows danced, playing tricks on their minds. A flicker of movement caught his eye, but when he turned to look, nothing was there. It was as if the darkness was alive, shifting and breathing in unison with their fear. He felt the walls close in, the space so small it felt like a tomb. "There has to be a way out," he insisted, pushing forward into the shadows. He could barely see anything ahead. The only thing he was sure of? They couldn't stay here. Suddenly, a faint glow emerged from the corner like a candle flickering against the encroaching gloom. "Look!" he shouted, his voice echoing, shattering the silence that surrounded them. The flame danced, casting distorted shapes on the walls. "Is it safe?" she breathed, her eyes wide with fear but also a flicker of hope ignited within them. "No idea," he admitted. "Just stay close." They sprinted toward the light, nearly tripping over the scattered debris. The heat from the omnipresent fire outside grew stronger as they approached. With every step, the man's heart raced both with fear and the adrenaline of survival. The light came from a doorway, splintered and partially ajar. The man pushed it open with all his might. It creaked like a warning, but to his relief, it yielded. The woman rushed in behind him, and he quickly followed, glancing around. The room was different, old furniture burnt and twisted, the remnants of lives once lived haunting the corners. But the flames danced beyond the windows, illuminating their path. A single beam of truth cut through the nightmare. They were alive, but at what cost? Somewhere in the distance, a wail echoed gruesomely, a sound that sent chills down their spines. It was the cry of another caught in the chaos, a reminder that not everyone would escape tonight. "Let us go," he urged, heading toward the window. But something compelled him to look back. Shadows swirled in the corner of the room, liquid and terrible. "They're coming!" he yelled, grabbing her hand. They set off towards the window, but the space felt smaller, constricted by an unseen encroachment. The creatures of darkness stoked their fear, feeding off the life around them. As they neared the fragile glass, the growl erupted again, louder than before, shaking the ground beneath them. "Move!" he shouted over the din, desperate to break free. They had to jump, but the woman hesitated, her eyes darting to the shadows gathering ominously at the edges of the room. "What are we jumping into?" she cried, panic-stricken. "Anything's better than this," he retorted, fear morphing into urgency. "Are you sure?" she pleaded, the baby still clutched to her chest, her heart torn. This wasn't just about them anymore, it was about survival as a family. The truth clawed at his gut. "We don't have time to think. We just have to trust each other." With a final sway of courage, he took a step back and lunged toward the window, dragging her along. They crashed through the broken glass, shattering the silence one last time in a cacophony of sound. They landed hard on ground below, enveloped in the night that seemed to conspire against them. They rolled to a stop, panting, the fire now a monstrous entity clawing at the building behind them. But as they lay there catching their breath, a pair of glowing eyes stared back from the darkness. "Get up!" he shouted, dragging her away from the treacherous remnants of the building and into the night. But those eyes glistened with a dreadful knowing, reflecting the very thing that hunted them, what awaited them outside the fire, the shadows, or something more sinister lurking just below the surface. The night was far from over, and every instinct screamed they weren't safe yet. The pounding of their hearts thudded like a war drum in his ears as they scrambled to their feet. The woman glanced over her shoulder, the baby's whimpers piercing through the chaos. The eyes watched, unblinking, hungry. Each crackle of burning wood in the distance felt like a warning shot, reminding them they were far from safety. "Where do we go?" she gasped, fear painted across her pale face. "There." He pointed frantically toward a narrow alleyway barely illuminated by the dim glow of street lamps flickering like dying stars. "It's our only chance." He pulled her along, and they dashed, adrenaline surging through their bodies. The heat from the blaze at their backs intensified, its breath warm and suffocating. Shadows shifted nearby, teasing the edge of their vision. It felt alive, as if the very air around them conspired against their escape. As they reached the entrance to the narrow passage, the man hesitated for a fraction of a second. He could hear it now, the growl, deep and primal, echoing behind them. It wasn't just part of the night. It was a promise of pursuit. "Go!" he urged, a burst of desperation fueling his voice, and she ducked into the alley first. He followed closely, keeping the baby tucked against her chest, their world narrowing to the darkness ahead and the lurking terror at their backs. The alley was a maze of cobblestones, littered with debris and refuse. The acrid smell of smoke clung to them, igniting a primal fear deeper than the flames. They moved quickly, trying to remain silent, but with each step, the ground seemed to protest beneath them, creaking like an old woman's bones. Suddenly, a savage roar erupted behind them. The sound reverberated off the dank walls, pulling the woman's attention back. "What was that?" she screamed, her body freezing with dread. "Keep moving," he shouted. They couldn't look back now. They needed to focus on what lay ahead, hand pressed against the wall, every sense heightened while the otherworldly presence stalked them closely. The alley narrowed suddenly, and panic surged. "This way!" he shouted, veering to the right, leading them back into a darker part of the city where the light of the fire could hardly reach. But as they turned the corner, they found themselves face to face with an iron gate, rusted and imposing, its locked bars blocking their escape into the night beyond. He banged on the gate with all his might. "It has to open." "Stop!" she hissed, her breath shaky. "They'll hear us." Almost as if in reply, the growl came again, closer this time, echoing off the brick. He could feel the dread swelling, the realization settling in. It was a monster, and it hungered. Taking a deep breath to push back the suffocating fear, he scanned the darkness, searching for anything, a tool, a rock, anything to pry the gate open. His eyes darted to the trash piled against the wall. "Help me," he urged, diving into the heap. As he rummaged through the debris, the shadows shifted. The woman clutched the baby tightly, casting cautious glances over her shoulder. "It's almost here," she urged, urgency laced her voice. "I just need a second." It felt futile. Every second stretched like an eternity. Just then, a sharp clang resonated through the alley as he pulled out a broken pipe. He turned to the gate and started to pry it open, desperation fueling his strength. With one last look into the darkness, he grunted, "Now." He shoved the pipe into the lock, jostling it as the scream echoed again, sharp and chilling, and then the gate swung open. They stumbled through, half falling into another alley just as the growling crescendoed behind them. They landed hard on the cold ground, a fast tumble leading them away from their pursuer. Breathless and disoriented, they peeked back, waiting for the shadows to engulf them once more. But what they found was worse. The growling was gone, replaced by something even more horrific and echoing in the distance. A laugh. "Run!" he shouted, thrusting himself to his feet, but as they sprinted further, dread settled in his chest. What lay ahead was still unknown, but was it more than just the monster that haunted them? The laughter echoed closer, a taunt in the night, a reminder that they weren't just running from fire and shadow anymore. What had they awakened? They dashed past darkened shops and shattered glass, the echoes of their frantic footsteps swallowed by the looming silence of the nightmare enveloping them. The laughter, chilling and mocking, hung precariously over the alleyway, a sinister cloud tracing their steps. The darkness itself felt as if it were closing in, dripping with dread. "Where do we go now?" she panted, struggling to keep pace, her eyes wide with panic, the baby nestled safely but uncomfortably against her chest. "Just keep moving," he insisted, his breath coming in ragged bursts. He had no plan, just an instinct to flee, to keep putting space between them and whatever horrors awaited behind them. They veered left at an intersection, leading into another alleyway, cluttered with the remnants of an old city. Broken crates formed makeshift barriers, tangled vines clawed at their clothes, and the smell of rot hung thick. The laughter faded, replaced by a low hiss like air escaping from a wound. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her heart pounding. She paused, petrified, scanning the shadows. "Keep going," he urged again, gripping her wrist and yanking her into motion. They had to find shelter, to gather their wits and somehow escape whatever had been unleashed. They stumbled into an open courtyard, surrounded by crumbling walls adorned with graffiti as if the restless spirits of the city had sought to scream their pain into the night. In the center stood a rusted fountain, dry and cracked like their hopes. That he glanced around, desperation clawing at his throat. "We can hide here just for a minute." But as they crouched behind the fountain, she noticed something glimmering among the shadows, a movement. "Look!" she exclaimed, pointing. Emerging from the adjoining alley was a figure, limping and cloaked in tattered rags. He was hunched, twisting, a man or perhaps something more. In the dim light, the contours of his face were mere suggestions, smudged and grotesque. "Is he?" She started to question, but he shook his head, urging her to silence. The man stopped, staring into the darkness where they stood. "I can help you," he croaked, his voice like an old engine straining to start. "But you have to trust me." "Trust him?" she hissed, her eyes darting to him for reassurance. "We have no choice," he hissed back. The ragged man took a cautious step forward, the flicker of moonlight revealing piercing eyes that glinted with something wild, a mixture of fear and a desperate kind of madness. "The laughter, it's not just in your heads. If you don't come with me, you won't survive the night." She shot him a look of uncertainty. "What does he mean?" "Listen," he said, time slipping like sand through their fingers. "Every moment we waste, we are closer to losing everything. We need answers." With trepidation clinging to them like ivy, they stepped forward, the man beckoning them into an even darker passage behind the fountain. The laughter echoed again, its mocking tone trailing off into silence, leaving the air thick with anticipation. "Stay close," he urged, slipping into the shadows, heart racing with the fear of what lay ahead. As they moved deeper into the dark, he wondered what kind of answers could this man possibly hold. But trust came at a price, and soon, they'd learn just how steep that price would be. They ventured forward, the uneasy silence wrapping around them like a pall, and with every step, the laughter morphed, distilled into a low, haunting melody that seemed to pulse through the very walls around them. What was it that they would uncover in the depths? And would they ever escape the grip of the laughter that hunted them? They followed the ragged figure deeper into the darkness, each step a gamble against the suffocating fear. The air felt thick with dampness and dread, wrapping around them like a shroud. The man led them through a narrow corridor, barely illuminated by flickering torchlight, casting eerie shadows that danced like lost souls on the stone walls. "Where are we going?" the woman whispered, anxiety painting her voice. The man hesitated, glancing back over his shoulder, his eyes glimmering with knowledge she could not share. "To a place where you can be safe," he rasped, though his face twisted under the weight of unspoken truth. "But first, you must understand the laughter and what hunts it." As they pressed onward, terror swelled in the woman's chest. Despite the knife edge of fear, they pressed on, drawn by the desperate hope that this man was guiding them toward sanctuary instead of doom. They entered a dimly lit chamber, and the man gestured to the far wall, where a series of faded symbols adorned the stone, a connection to a history lost, perhaps signs of the city's darkest magic. "This is where secrets are kept," he said, voice low and hushed. "You're not the first to seek refuge here." "Secrets?" she echoed, fear and confusion mingling. "What do you mean?" "London is a labyrinth of souls," he explained, eyes flickering to the shadows. "The laughter you hear is not but the echoes of those who perished in the flames. They roam endlessly, hungry for a new audience. It awakens every time death paints the night. He paused, panic swirled within them as they absorbed his words. Then we need to leave. The man insisted, grabbing the woman's arm. We can't stay here. No. The ragged man called, raising a hand sharply. You must listen. Laughter brings enemies, but knowledge will protect you. You can choose to hide or face what you must. What are we facing? The woman asked, voice tight with dread. The real enemy lies ahead, he murmured, stepping closer to the markings. The shadows that trick you, that whisper sweet promises of freedom meanwhile plotting. But within these walls, there's power if you dare. Beneath the flickering glow, she looked past him and saw jagged edges of ancient stones, their surfaces glimmering slightly, alive with energy. Within the chaos of despair stood possibility if only she could unlock it. With stealing resolve, she turned to the man beside her, gripping his arm. We need to tap into this power. We need to fight back. He nodded, breath hitching, but he couldn't mask the terror that reflected in his eyes. But how? The ragged man stepped aside, beckoning them closer. Speak the truth of your heart, for only then will strength emerge. What do you fear most? What haunts you? The woman took a deep breath, her voice quaking thinly. I fear losing my child. I fear being consumed by despair, she whispered, tears streaking her dirt-smeared face. Then speak it. Let the shadows know what you carry. The ragged man urged. I fear the fire taking everything I love. She cried. I want to let it win. The walls began to pulse and a wave of energy resonated from the symbols. A glimmer of light ignited in the room, washing over them in waves of warmth and illumination. The fear gave way to a strange, powerful urge, a calling to awaken an ancient strength that surged within. With each declaration, they stepped forward, encouraged by the surge of light. Together. The man urged, his own fear turning into determination. We will not be victims anymore. As the man's voice rang through the chamber, the light flickered fiercely, illuminating the ominous shadows lurking in every corner. They felt the weight of loss behind them begin to lift as hope surged itself through the darkness. The shadows writhed, recoiling from the light, howling in anguish. It knows! The ragged man exclaimed, as the laughter echoed, then turned into frightened wails. You are stronger than it. With each word, the power unfurled before them. We are not afraid. We will fight for our lives and our futures. The echoes of laughter faded as the light surged, consuming the dark. It cleaved. An opening in the shadow, revealing an exit bathed in golden luminescence. Go! Now! The ragged man shouted, motioning them forward as the shadows clawed frantically at the light, their twisted forms disintegrating into a swirl of ash. The woman glanced back, her heart ached for the man who had guided them, but they had to leave. They dashed through the glowing passage, the warmth embracing them as freedom beckoned with open arms. One final look back revealed the last remnants of laughter, defeated by the sheer strength of their voices. Together, they stepped into the light, emerging into a world where flames still crackled but hope surged brightly against the odds. They took a breath, hearts racing yet alive, knowing they had faced the unknown and survived. As they made their way into the skyline of a city shaking off the grip of despair, they were reborn from ashes anew. That night, they learned the largest battle is not against fire or shadow, but finding the courage to reclaim their light. And now, as the embers of the Great Fire of London fade into folklore, remember, in every shadow, there's power waiting to be unleashed. If you felt the pulse of hope in this story, it's time for you to act. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now, feed the algorithm and help more souls find their way. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling end, because true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel.